Welcome to Queers and Quills, the official podcast. I'm audiobook narrator Kirt Graves. Every episode, I invite an attending author or narrator to join me for a one-on-one conversation about their lives and their art, so attendees and readers from across the world can get to know them not only as professionals, but as people. Joining me today is author Kate Hawthorne. Kate Hawthorne is an author of character-driven LGBT romance, known for crafting emotionally intense stories with high heat and a kinky twist. We'll get into it. Creating worlds where passion and angst collide, Kate's books bring you complex protagonists in fearless pursuit of self-exploration and happy, if sometimes unconventional, endings for everyone. So welcome to the podcast, Kate. It's so good to meet you.
It is so great to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, beginning with the question that we ask everybody, tell us about your author origin story. How did we end up doing what we're doing now?
It was a pure stroke of luck. I tell people now, I never realized, even growing up, as much as I read and as much as I wrote when I was in elementary school and junior high and high school, nobody ever said to me, you could be an author. I was aware that authors existed, but nobody ever said to me that this was a career you could have. So I took a completely different career path. And then I ended up being a late in life romance reader. I was well into my 20s when I started seriously reading romance. I had read Danielle Steele.
Is that late in life? I'm sorry.
No, I read like Danielle Steele and Nora Roberts with my grandma when I was really young. But I know so many of like my peers in this genre have been reading romance since the 90s or the early 2000s. And I came to it a lot later than some people have. And I was reading it, and Amazon sort of led me down this slippery slope from reading hetero romance to MFM and MMS. And then Amazon was like, maybe you would like N.R. Walker, and dropped the very first MM onto my Kindle. And it was just all over from that point. And I think that it's really the accessibility that readers have to gay romance authors and the community that gay romance readers have on social media that sort of positioned me to meet people who encouraged me to, just write for fun. And then they were like, oh, you know what, Kate, this is actually really good, and you need to do more of this. And so just a chapter for fun and a group chat turned into a book, that went to #1 in gay romance. And so then I was like, oh, okay. And that was 7 years ago, and I have not stopped since.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you hit at that time when, for good or ill, Amazon has done some things for us that have been helpful, in that there was a period of time when people were being guided to the dark side of queer romance. They offered a path. Everything wasn't so linear and wasn't like, I'm just going to show you the same thing you just read. It used to actually suggest, you liked this, maybe you'll like this other thing that's not the same.
Yeah, I feel like the algorithm used to be a little more forward thinking than it is now.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So you landed on MM Romance and N.R. Walker. What was that book? Do you remember the title?
I don't know how to pronounce it. Yes,
I know the
butterfly one. It's the butterfly one. And I just absolutely fell in love with Lawson, and I loved it. And then it was just a slippery slope through the old favorites after that. It was like, oh, you like this? Here's Ella Frank. And then I was done.
Yeah.
And now here I am.
Do you remember that feeling that first time, what it was about queer characters that appealed to you?
Partially seeing experiences that were more aligned to my lived experience as a queer person versus these very stringent heterosexual romance characters. And I feel like at the time when I was reading hetero romance specifically, was very like, here's how the male character is and here's how the female character is. And I don't want to say that it was cookie cutter. I'm not, but it was getting predictable. Like there was a big boom
Listen,
with
I love
publishing.
a cookie. I love a cookie. I love when they're in a shape. It's not that they don't have their place, you know?
And that's what romance is, right? Romance itself is a shape, and because you know what you're getting. And it just felt, it was getting really predictable. And then when I ended up reading romance, not only did the stories and the experiences feel more aligned with like what my experience had been and what my friends' lived experience had been, I was seeing so much more like character growth and development in different situations and different approaches to tropes. And I feel like queer romance authors are a lot more innovative in some cases with how they approach common storylines and stuff like that. And so it's just engaging and interesting.
I like that. So what was that first book? The one that went to number one?
It was called His Kind of Love. And it was a very, very loose, Little Red Riding Hood retelling. I thought, what if the stalker gets his happy ending? So it was age gap and wealth gap that some of my readers now kindly refer to it as like wholesome stalking. Because it was definitely not like dark romance stalking. Like Gabriel was stalking Joel because like he was in love and just he wanted his man safe until he could be the one to keep his man safe. So sweet wholesome stalking. Yeah.
Put it on the t-shirt.
Yeah. Wholesome stalking.
Sweet wholesome stalking.
Yeah, that was the first one. So
I love that. And like, was that enough motivation, that success, to be like, yes, I'm going to keep going? Or what were the external or internal factors that made you say like, this is not going to be a fluke. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do more of this.
Yeah. I was already well into writing my second book by the time I released the first one. So I was already committed to it. Like for me, like storytelling has always been really easy for me. I have not once in the over 7 years now that I have been actively publishing run out of ideas. I finished a book and there is something new ready to go. And so I really enjoyed the process and I enjoyed the relationships that I was making with other authors and also with readers. When we talked about how Amazon used to be so much better at kicking us into new places, Facebook used to be a lot better about it too. And this was like the heyday of reader groups. And it was I was able to look at these communities that I had found and build my own. And so I was definitely very invested in those relationships as well, on top of the writing aspect of it. But yeah, there was just no stopping. Even if it wasn't going to go to number one again, there was no turning.
Yeah. I mean, listeners of this podcast will know, but it is hard sometimes to explain to people that the romance community and how tight it is. Still is, I think. I have to admit, I've logged off of a lot of the social media, so I'm not on the Facebook for those groups as much as I used to be. But like, I feel like they have found a way to endure.
Right. And and if it's not on Facebook, it's on another platform, but you still see them. You see them pop up or you see them come around, or even if the algorithm is not delivering your content, then maybe 6 months later they will. And then people will be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know you had a new book out or things like that. So we persevere. That's for sure.
Yeah. And we show up.
Yeah.
Like when we do these little conferences, we show up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that we show up not just for the books, which is great, but also for the community that like we've all created because of them.
Yeah. Are there people coming to Queers and Quills that you're excited to reconnect with? Like, do you have a posse?
Well, yeah. I don't know if I have a posse. Like I'm in an author group chat. And so it's like one of those weird things where it's like, I feel so connected because I talk to so many people, all the time, but I am, obviously excited to see N.R. Walker again because I just think everything she writes is gold. I'm looking forward to seeing Haley Turner again because she doesn't get out as much. And like CS.
See, this is what I love about our community is we're colleagues and fans.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see people that I haven't seen in a couple years, but I'm really excited to see people that I have never seen before.
Yeah. Speaking of people I've never actually met in person, I've never met N.R. Walker. In fact,
Really?
I've never talked to N.R. Walker. I know people who know and talk to N.R. Walker. So like through a one person, like, what is that? The Kevin Bacon effect? Like,
yeah. The 6 degrees of N.R. Walker.
I am 1 degree away from N.R. Walker, and I keep trying to be like, if she writes a book in the U.S., somebody tell her.
Yeah, tell her.
So
I know. I met her in 2018 at my first GRL, I think, and that was the first and last time that I saw her.
Yeah, I think I just missed because well, I'm not going to remember right now where I was in 2018. Why are we even trying? We're not going to do that.
Yeah, we should not.
But I do think 2019 was my first GRL, so I think
I
think I just missed. But
yeah.
So we know N.R. Walker is one influential story for you. Are there any others that have really influenced your work? Whether it's from when you were like growing up that you carry with you now, or like ones you're currently reading?
I am like #1 Sierra Simone fangirl. I love everything that she writes and does and thinks of. And when I read her books, it's really just like, it makes me want to throw my computer out a window a lot of the time. But then I like have those feelings and I'm like, no, Kate, just do better. What? And so I feel like when I read her books, I'm really like, okay, do better. Like figure out how to characterize this better. Like develop your craft more. So definitely her. I'm reading an author right now named Saint Gibson, who writes like very queer fantasy, but not like high fantasy. She has a book out called Evocation, and then Ascension is the next one in the series. And then she has a one called Dowry of Blood, which is a retelling about like Dracula, but from his wife's point of view. And it's written like almost epistolary, like
sort of like Dracula. That's a really smart way to do it.
Yeah. And just really like really good storytelling. And I'm sort of like in my fantasy era right now. And I love like I'm constantly like impressed and in awe of like Alethea Faust and the insanely complicated and kinky world they made with the Sex Wizards series. And just the way their brain works when it comes to fantasy always really makes me think like, okay, like even though I'm not writing fantasy, how can I craft this contemporary world better? So I like that a lot.
Yeah, world building was my like gateway to more fantasy as a reader, because I've talked about this publicly before, so like I'm out. But like the thing that did it for me was going to see Twilight in the theaters.
Okay.
Because I was just like, wow, this is a really interesting new way to think about vampires. Like, and like the world building of that was interesting to me. So then I read the books and then I kept reading and I kept finding, more contemporary urban paranormal fantasy versus high fantasy, which I'd always been a fan of, which of course has complex world building. But the way to build a magic system that has to also exist in the world that I recognize, and you have to explain why this can exist in a world that I recognize, but I don't see it happening in front of me. Like the complexity of that was really super interesting to me, and definitely was like a gateway to like read more of that.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think that we have to pay so much attention to these books that we may not think like that we may want to like slander or, but to really like, you have to look at like what Twilight has done for reading and interest in reading and access to books and romance and YA and vampire. Like, that's like a revolutionary book, whether you like it or not. Like, the cultural phenomena that came from the Twilight series is massive.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing that I just want to comment on, because I always find it so amazing, is like, you just listed a bunch of authors, some of whom I have heard of, and others, even I, who have existed in this little section of like the romance genre for 8 years now, even I have not heard of them yet. Like,
really?
that there's still so much to discover, regardless of how much. Now, I am somewhat limited because like I do have to really focus on the people who are paying me to read their books.
Right. Yeah, for
and I
sure.
don't have a ton of time to read outside of my job. So that I do understand, I do have some blinders on in that way, but like, I still just think it's so cool that the community continues to grow and is also just so large that like, you can always turn and see somebody new.
Yeah. And I think like to your question earlier about posse, it's like, we find like our little hub of people and we're like, yes, you are mine. And then you have your little world, but your world is just a piece of like these other worlds. And so we all have our little posses and our little groups, but we're really all sitting in the same pond together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait for it. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah.
So if somebody was just getting to know your work for the first time, where would you point them as a good starting place?
I would point them to Humbled, which is the first book in my Trophy Dom's Social Club series. It's a 5-book series that takes place around a kink club that I established in an earlier series. So if you're a series purist, start with Worth the Risk, because then you're going to find the kink club and then go to Humbled. But Humbled is the first book. Yeah, like it's tangled, but it's all there. Humbled is a perfectly fine place to start, though. It has some of my favorite little micro tropes within the relationship of these characters. I write kink a lot, pretty much all the time, and I really like delving into the psychology of kink and why people like these things, why they choose to do these things. And so I like to write less known kinks. I like to put them in unconventional relationship situations. And so Humbled is an age gap romance between two men who both identify as dominant. And so then the whole development of the story is them trying to figure out how they can be in a relationship together while they both want to be in charge, and who needs to bend and who needs to give. And it's big found family vibes because it's this friend group. So there's 5 friends in the group, 5 books. And then you add all the boyfriends in, and it's a fun, chaotic, kinky party by the time we get to the 5th book.
Again, write it on a t-shirt. Fun, chaotic, kinky party. Yes.
I will. I'll get you. I'm out of stickers. So
if you sponsor a cocktail hour, that's what it's called.
It's fun.
Fun, chaotic, kinky.
Yeah, I just got back from a book signing last weekend, and somebody told me I should make a sticker that says "My book boyfriend has a boyfriend."
Yes, that's
and
a good one.
I was like, yes, I can do that. I'll have those for my next event. So
awesome. Okay, now are you ready to play our little question and answer game?
I'm ready.
Cool. All right. So the rules of our game are simple. I have a deck of cards, and on each card is a question. So these questions aim to learn more about you. Some are biographical, some are hypothetical, and some are just silly. But I'm not picking which questions you will answer. Fate is. So I will deal 3 cards every round, and you choose one. Whatever card you pick, you are agreeing to answer, with a couple of caveats. So if a question comes along that you don't want to answer, you have 2 opportunities to switch things up. Okay. You can, one time, turn the tables on me, forcing me to answer the question, or you can also discard a personal question in favor of answering a bookish question from the white deck.
Okay.
But you then must answer whatever question gets dealt.
Okay.
And sometimes people have strong opinions about bookish things, so you never know.
We really do have
You never know what trouble you might end up in.
God. Okay. Let's go.
All right.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? All right, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, dealing cards. 1,
Okay.
2, and 3. Which do you choose? 3. Here we go. If you had a personal mascot, what would it be?
Does it have to be an animal?
No. Mascots can be anything.
My mascot would totally be a glass of red wine.
I love it.
That's actually my newsletter is Wine Time with Kate Hawthorne. So it would obviously be, it would be a glass of Merlot.
Do you have, is there, what would be the name of, your mascot? The one that runs on the field?
All I can think of is the way my 8-year-old daughter names stuff. So it would be Winey.
Wine, yes.
Winey the wino.
Oh, could it be a kind of rhino that is also carrying red wine?
Yeah, just for you, it'll be a rhino on 2 legs with a glass of wine, and it'll all slosh out everywhere when he runs onto the field.
The wino rhino. I love that.
Perfect. Yeah, there you go. The wino rhino. Kate's wino rhino.
All right. Good answer. All right. Round 2. Here we go. Card 1, card 2, and card 3.
1.
Which celebrity chef would you most like to make you dinner?
So I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm very fortunate that I have access to a celebrity chef, not personally, but
not in your kitchen,
not personally. But I don't know. Did you watch Culinary Class Wars on Netflix?
I didn't. No.
Okay, it was this wild Korean cooking contest where they took celebrity chefs and then not amateur chefs, but local chefs and restaurant owners and stuff like that, and then made them compete against each other. And one of the chefs on that show owns a couple of restaurants here in Louisville, and his name is Edward Lee. And everything I've ever had that he has put on the menu is delicious. And so I would 100% want a private meal from him for sure.
Yes. That sounds great.
I love Asian flavors in food, and I really love Korean food. So definitely him.
All right. Here comes round 3. Card 1, card 2, and card 3.
How many rounds are we doing?
Until we're out of time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's do number 2 then.
Number 2. Okay. Okay, there's a lot of slashes in this question. So
God, okay.
What's the funniest / most disappointing / weirdest text you've received? So I guess it's what's a text you've received that's given you a really strong emotional reaction?
Oh God. I don't even know what I could, with that, out of context, before my best friend died, he sent me a text message to tell me that he could fit, 3 donuts around his dick.
And you weren't asking about that?
I said I had asked him offhand, casually in conversation, before, and then the conversation, we had a good laugh about it, and then I got the answer very out of context, a couple weeks after the fact, and that has definitely caught me a little bit off guard.
That would make me laugh.
That's probably the biggest one, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. That's a better answer than I could come up with. So, good job. All right, here we go. Card 1, card 2, or card 3? 3. What's something that people think makes them look cool, but actually makes them look ridiculous?
Can I trade this for a bookish one?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Switching decks. Yes. Shuffling. I'm even going to give it a proper, like, fan shuffle here.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Here it is. Oh, do you judge books by their cover? Have you ever been pleasantly surprised by one?
Yeah, 100%. I judge books by their cover, especially since I just started reading. My brain will not let me read high fantasy. So kudos to you for starting there. We're living in that space. I started like fantasy light, romantasy light for sure. So I'm very swayed by covers. And for the most part, I'm pleasantly surprised, but I absolutely will buy a book solely based off the cover.
Yeah, I will too. Sometimes just to have on my shelf.
Like I just bought, hold on. Where is it? I can't get up and get it because I'm wearing pajama pants. I'm only just for the top up here. But A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland, 100% bought just for the cover, and it ended up being one of the best books that I read last year.
I love that. Yes. I love that. Yeah, no, I'm definitely swayed by book covers. If they're pretty, I'm like, well, then that must be.
It must be good.
It must be good, you know? So, all right. I think we have time for 2 more rounds.
Okay.
So I'm going to shuffle and deal again here. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
1.
Card 1. What's the cheesiest movie moment or line you can think of?
I will give you that one.
Okay.
Well, I just thought of one after I gave it to you.
Okay. Well, let's both answer then. I'm going to let you go first while I think of mine.
Okay. Since I was like, my brain just blanked of every movie that I've ever seen in my whole life. But then when I gave it to you, I was like, oh, we were just talking about Twilight. So it was obviously, Ella, where the hell you been, Loca?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
See, the problem is I'm a little bit of a sucker for the cheese. So I'm bad maybe at identifying what's considered cheesiest.
It could be cheesy in a good way. Like you don't need to look at cheesy as being like negative. Like you can still like it. It's cheesy.
That's true. I don't know. So I'm probably not going to remember a line, but I will say, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and say what I think the cheesiest premise of a movie was like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Right.
I remember being completely charmed by that movie and also the whole time thinking like, what? Why would this work? Is this what straight guys like?
That whole era of like rom-com was so delightful.
Yeah, it was. So I'm sure there's a line in there somewhere that would make me go, oh, brother. But I can't remember specifically.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right, here we go. I'm going to deal the last one. Card 1. Oh, and you're out of options to get rid of them, too.
I know. I'm stuck with it now. It's probably going to be like, if you could burn one book.
Yeah.
No.
We'll see. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Let's go with 3.
Oh, what do you think is the most unpleasant sounding word?
Oh, God. I feel like I actually feel like onomatopoeia is not a pleasant, like it doesn't have a good mouth feel, so it doesn't sound good in my ears. So that's like a top contender for sure.
I like it.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. In absence of another one, I think that's probably the first one that comes to mind.
I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
It's not only hard to say.
I mean, it's easy, but it just like bounces around the mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that like I can't pass that one to you, but I am really curious what your answer would be as a narrator. Like, what is your least favorite word to say?
So that's a different question, because just as far as unpleasantness, I am on the moist train. I just don't like the word moist.
That's so valid.
But there are so many words that I don't like having to say out loud. My latest one is the word vague.
Okay.
Because I'm from Wisconsin, and we have, like, if I really leaned into my Wisconsin accent, there's like a lot of like diphthongs. And so I worked really hard to get rid of all of my like vowels that had 2 syllables. But you almost have to for that word. Like, it needs the egg, you know, and so like I've gone so far away from my Wisconsin accent that I feel like I can't say that word anymore. It's just, it sounds wrong. No matter how I say it, it's like vague, like.
And then by the time you get it, you're like, this isn't a real word.
I've just lost it. It's just like, well, I can't say that word. So if it's in a book, I guess you can't hire me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Or you can just omit it and then hope that falls under the 5% that'll still let us whisper things.
Exactly.
You're like, ooh.
Yeah, precisely. But it goes in cycles. There are some words that I'm just like, why did that? I've lost it. It's no longer a part of my vocabulary. So, but that's it right now.
I love it.
But thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. I truly, truly hope that folks who aren't already familiar with your work check it out, and folks who have not had the pleasure of meeting you will get to do so at May. And listeners, thank you for joining us for Queers and Quills, the official podcast. If you're already signed up to attend Queers and Quills, make sure to say hello to me and to Kate at the Oregon Convention Center in May. And if you're not, follow Queers and Quills on Instagram to follow along with all the fun this year and get updates about ticket availability in the future. One more time to our special guest. Thank you, Kate Hawthorne, for coming on. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, I'm Kirt Graves, and I hope you're having a very gay day. Queers and Quills, the official podcast, is produced and hosted by Kirt Graves, in coordination with Mahogany Mail and Marley Valentine. All copyrighted material is shared with permission. Music and sound effects are licensed through Storyblocks Audio. All opinions shared are those of the individuals and do not reflect the positions or policies of any company or organization with which they happen to be associated.